Hey everyone, welcome to Value First, the show where I interview PLG sales and growth leaders who share their secrets about how to grow revenue at PLG SaaS startups. Today my guest is Esben Friis Jensen. He's the founder and chief growth officer at Userflow, the fastest no-code way to build great onboarding experiences for your users. Esben is also the former founder of Cobo.io, where he was responsible of PLG initiatives. Esben, great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time, man.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Let's start with just introing Userflow. Why did you guys start the business, and what's the pain point that you guys are trying to solve?
So actually, Userflow, when it started, it was not a product tour business as it is today. So just for everybody out there, it's what you can do with Userflow is basically build in-app onboarding, product tours, surveys, and so on to really help onboard your customers better into your software platform. But actually, when Userflow started, it was a video recording platform that allowed you to build scalable kind of video training for users. And one thing Sebastian, who back then started the company, did was that he added in a product tour actually to the product, because he wanted to onboard customers better onto the video product. And then he started getting feedback that basically that people loved this kind of product tour and whether they could get something similar. And that's when we decided to pivot into the whole product tour thing. And then it just went from there.
Love it.
So yeah, it was really driven by customer feedback, you could say.
Love it. Yeah, scratching your own itch and customer feedback. That's amazing. One thing I gotta ask, I don't want to make you repeat what you've said on other podcasts because you're vocal in the PLG space, but you've grown to millions in revenue or good amounts of ARR with only 3 people. I think you're 3 now, but you were 2 at first. Yeah. How the hell did you do that, and how are you still doing it?
Yeah, we are 2 co-founders, and then we have a freelance designer, a really great designer. But yeah, I would say the main reason I think we have been able to do it is our very strong product-led motion, and what that really starts with is our product, right? I think a lot of people talk about product-led kind of as this thing that you have to like build all sorts of side things to make it work. But actually the core essence of a product-led motion is that you have a great product that's easy to use for customers, where they don't run into a lot of problems, where they get the value, they have a real use case and so on. And that's really what's been driving our growth, right? And then we're of course using Userflow on top of Userflow to onboard our customers to truly see the value as well. But yeah, a highly product-led motion has reduced the need for support and thereby the need for people in the company.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it with like smiling while you were saying product-led growth. I think product-led growth is a sexy word right now. It's a sexy term. Like people are using it like AI a couple years ago when AI was super trendy, like something.ai. Obviously, Userflow is committed to product-led growth, and you're very, very product-led and truly. What do you think are the biggest mistakes? Like in the OpenViews product benchmark that came out recently, they talk about product-led imposters. What do you think? What do you see the small SaaS or even the big SaaS doing as mistakes in terms of product-led growth?
I think mistakes is a tough word, right? I think everybody's trying, especially small startups, are always iterating and learning.
Yeah.
I think when I look at larger companies that are moving from sales-led to product-led, the mistake they make is they overthink it. They are forgetting that many of those companies, and we're talking about software as a service companies, were probably product-led when they started, right? And then they moved more and more to a sales-led motion. And now it almost feels scary for them to move to a product-led motion, even though they've likely been it before. So for them, I think the biggest mistake they make is kind of overthink everything, overanalyze everything instead of like moving in small iterations. So I think that's kind of the mindset you need to have about product-led growth is, especially if you're moving from a sales-led approach, is do it in small iterations. It's a big change management exercise.
Yeah.
And really do it together. It's a very cross-functional exercise as well, because you suddenly have to get the entire organization to think product first. In a small startup like ours, that's easy, right? Like we are just two people who needs to be aligned and think product first. But in a large organization, that becomes harder.
But it's easy, but I see a lot of companies, and I mean, still Blinks, we're still not there in terms of our full product-led motion, but I see a lot of companies overcomplicating it, making it hard, having the sales-led, product-led mixing. And I was watching your sign-up flow in the video where you explain how you integrate sales into product-led motion. And one thing that I noticed is you put a free trial CTA. That's your first, you want to get people to your product, and you have a sign up for a demo. But what I found interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on, is even if you click sign up for a demo on Userflow, you're still almost forced to go through the product. And you talked about it on your video. So I want to get your thoughts there, because some bottom-up SaaS have had confusing landing pages and onboarding flows. And I think yours is a good example of what to do if you're really trying to start with your product.
Yeah, I think being truly product-led is a push towards the product. And I think we are just one of the players doing this, right? I think if you look at somebody like Amplitude, which is a bit larger business than us, they're doing exactly the same, right? Try to go to it's maybe become more prominent, but it used to be very much view a demo or schedule a demo, right? And we are doing the same. We really want to give people a chance to look at our product before they do a demo, right? Because one, it saves us time, of course, resource-wise. A lot of the demos are repetition of stuff you could easily watch in a video or see yourself in the product and play with it, right? And then secondly, they also get to understand the product a bit better before they actually schedule a demo, and then they can ask better questions if they end up scheduling a demo anyway, right? So I'm not against demos. I think demos can work great, but I prefer demos where the user has already tried the product before, right? Otherwise, it's just basically show and tell, right, of stuff they could easily discover themselves.
Yeah, totally. If your onboarding flow is great, you're going to qualify most of your prospects anyway through the question that you ask them in your onboarding, through what actions they're taking, and watching your video on how you integrate sales into product-led growth. It comes back to making it simple. Like you can probably explain a summary of what you guys do, but how you guys run sales at Userflow is a really, really simple process. And I think a lot of companies are overcomplicating things. They're looking at the Slacks, the Lazians, the big companies. But for an SMB startup, it can be really easy to get control over things. So why don't you go through like a quick summary of how you guys run your sales process internally?
Yeah, sure. I think it's again the same, right? I always have the mindset, start small and then iterate. Don't start very advanced. Don't overthink every scenario. So first of all, our sales motion starts with the product-led motion, right? So as you said, we highly incentivize customers to go on our free trial. That's our primary call to action. And if they're not ready for that, then go to a page where they can view a demo. So we have a video demo where we basically give the same demo we would give in a sales call in a video. We also have a click-through kind of thing where you can see what you can build with Userflow. So a lot of people like that they can actually go to an actual website and see what you can build with Userflow on our website. So that's, again, putting the product in the hands of the customers even before they did the free trial. So that's really the start, right? And then let's say somebody signs up for a free trial. We have automation, a lot of automation, when they sign up for the free trial, we have the Userflow. So we use Userflow and Userflow. So we have an onboarding checklist that the user can run through. And it starts with a flow that really drives to the kind of key aha moment, right? And the key aha moment for Userflow is how great our UX of the builder is. So we want to drive them to actually build a flow an onboarding flow right from the beginning and see how easy that is. So we drive them towards that. Then on the other side, we are also starting to send emails. So we trigger emails whenever somebody signs up. This is just a basic sequence of emails that we send to everybody. And we kind of do a mixture between very personalized emails coming from me and then more kind of automated tip kind of emails being sent. So you can say this is a lot to do with the automation. And then we, of course, have the support channel. We have a chat on our website where users can always reach out and ask questions. So we are, I would say, the sales in a product-led motion really is you allow the customer to sign up themselves, do everything themselves, do everything self-service and not talk to anybody. But you're giving all these touch points to them to allow them to reach out and talk to you if they like, right? And that's very important. Because we're not against talking with anybody. We love to talk with customers. We love to talk to prospects and answer their questions, right? But they can then start with the product and then they can reach out in case they have questions, and we're making ourselves visible from there. And then we have, of course, if somebody reaches out, it's a very kind of clear purchasing indicator, right? At least if they're asking the right questions. But other than that, we also use a simple metric for assessing if somebody is ready to buy. And that is if they spend more than 30 minutes building in our platform. That's kind of the key metric we use now, together with whether they are an ideal customer profile. So ideal customer profile is like, for us as SaaS business, that is, have some kind of money to at least
like
pay our basic package. Yeah. So that's the kind of target, right?
How did you find your PQL? Because you just mentioned 30 minutes in the product, create at least one experience. Yeah. I think what a lot of SMB SaaS are struggling is, what is my PQL point? What is, yeah. I mean, we all have an idea of our ICPs and the firmographics around there, but yeah. How did you guys on a data standpoint figure out your PQL level?
It's a funny question, right? Because and I think honestly, if you ask big companies as well, I think what you end up doing often with these PQLs is you tend to come up with all sorts of things for what makes a PQL, right? And you're overcomplicating it. Yeah. And I think over time, of course, we'll add to the PQL measurement. That's again starting with something basic and iterating. But it's really a heuristic at this point, right? We're seeing a correlation between customers who are spending 30 minutes plus building and then buying, right? I see a very small correlation between people who spend less than that in their trial and buying, right? So that's the easy heuristic, is we're seeing there's a strong correlation between people who buy and spend that amount of time in the app.
Okay, so essentially, trying to understand the correlation between key product actions and retention or willingness to buy.
And it depends on your target, right? Like, what is your goal? For us, the primary goal initially has been conversion, right? And so you make your kind of conversion PQL, and PQL is often about conversion, right? So it's like you have to find out what's the correlation to somebody buying, right? And I honestly think it doesn't require a lot of deep data analysis to actually do that. To make it perfect, yes, but to have a rough idea and build something basic, no. I think most of people will know by looking at basic data what is the reason.
Same thing goes for anything, right? If you're building a website landing page, like, you start really small and iterate from that. I think it's the same thing for PQL. You don't need to have super complex data dashboards and data scientists to understand, okay, what's our North Star metric that leads to conversion, and then we track that and we engage with those. I want to come back to something you said, because you've mentioned a lot of automation. Obviously, building a successful business with a few amount of employees and being product-led requires automation, but there's also a trend of people being super annoyed by automation. I think automation is risky. It's useful, but risky at the same time. Mm-hmm. How do you see automation versus like being generic? Because your approach is very thoughtful. Your emails are very personalized. You guys give opportunities for your users to engage with you. So if you were like, what advice would you give in terms of automation versus personalized versus being able to scale your process as a whole?
I think so. For me, everything should be automated, except answers, right? Like answers should not be automated. You should always answer, or you can automate maybe some answers via your chat if you like with a chatbot. But I think the best support is given with real answers from real people, right? But I think even the personalized stuff you can automate, right? And you can make it seem very personalized. So I don't think personalized rules out automation. And I think it's really about making it look like something that is personalized. And it's also that it is me on the other end of those emails, right? So if they write back to me, I'll respond, right? It's just for me to save time on not having to write the same message to all new people who sign up to our platform, right? That's the automation piece.
Okay.
So we really want to talk with customers, and I think most people will probably see those emails as being personal emails, right? But they are semi-automated.
Okay, so you would let's say prospects reach PQL and Userflow, and you need to engage. You would run the first touch, or you would run automated touch points until they raise their hand.
And I think and I think it's about those emails are very much about like reaching out and making myself available. The other type of emails that we're using that are fully automated actually, or looks automated as well, is what we call Userflow tips. And it's actually an idea we got from, it completely blew my mind, Superhuman. But Superhuman, they are doing these tips from the CEO. They're more personalized, his emails. But it's basically like, did you know that you could do this with Superhuman and so on, right? And we do those for Userflow. So we send like tips on a monthly basis. Did you know you could do this? And that's a fully automated email, but it gives value to the user, right? It gives them some advice that they were maybe looking for or were thinking about. It's not just like a stupid reach out email. It's actually, did you know you could do this with our tool, right? And gives them some real scenarios on how they could use it. And those we're seeing a high opening rate on, and people also sometimes respond to them. That's an example of a automated email that actually drives value and people feel engaged with. So I think it's not about the automation, it's about the integrity and kind of like engaging the users in the right way, right?
100%. I think there's a lot of ways to be personalized, to be relevant, and to switch your mentality from I'm hunting you to I'm working alongside you. Even with product actions, like I've seen a lot of companies like Warmly or Opinion X, when you do something great in the product, the founder just congratulates you. And the message is like, hey, I see you're killing it in the product. Obviously that requires some product data integration in the background, but can be super personalized. And then the founder's there if the person is just interested in learning more. For example, pitch, I think I saw an in-product bump the other day, like, hey, I saw you were clicking around those features. Do you want to know about Pitch Pro? So it's a great way to be there, to really frame it as like, I'm working alongside you. I'm not trying to sell you something, but if you want to engage in a sales conversation, I'm here. And it won't be a bot.
For sure. It's about putting the product in focus. Another thing you touched upon here is segmentation, right? And Userflow allows you to segment users, to give customized onboarding experience based on who the user is and so on, right? And again, and you can do the same with emails. You can do the same, like you can become really segmented. But again, one thing I want to just warn about is don't make it overly complex, right? If you start having like 20,000 segments or different kind of this could happen, then this could happen. It becomes a maintenance nightmare, right? And that I don't think helps anybody. So really think about, do I really need to create like a super customized experience for every single user, right? Sometimes it's easier to keep it a bit more basic.
Yeah, talking about maintenance nightmare, I think that's interesting because when we first had a chat prior to this, me and you, we talked about where the PLG sales tools were going and the fact of going to the core problem versus adding layers. Right now, what we see with SaaS companies is really adding layers on top of everything. So I have my core systems and then I add tools that add some functionalities. Do you think we're going to scale back down to actually replacing? Because what we see right now is we don't replace the core systems, but we add cool stuff on top of it. I want to get your thoughts on if that's the way to go or we should revert back.
And I think here you're especially talking about CRMs, right? Like CRMs is a core system. Everybody uses Salesforce. Everybody uses HubSpot or these like core CRM system. And then there's a lot of tools being built on top of that. And that has actually been both, I think both HubSpot's and Salesforce strategy is a very kind of integration strategy, right? The more tools that will integrate with us, the stronger position we have in the market. And they've been able to grow that way, right? By building this integration ecosystem, which is impressive. Great done. Yeah, it's fantastic.
But it can also build maintenance nightmare in the background too, if you don't do it well.
It can, for sure. And that's the other part of it, right? The other thing I would say is Salesforce is 20 years old. So maybe it's time for something new, right? And I think SaaS has changed, especially SaaS has changed a lot, and how you do software as a service sales. Product-led growth is just one of the things you do, but it's also subscription models, how you set up everything. A lot of things have changed in those 20 years, but the core of Salesforce has not changed into fitting with those processes. So I think there's a gap in the market for somebody to build a true software as a service CRM. Basically, not a CRM should of course be a software as a service, but it should be a CRM that's fit for purpose for software as a service businesses. And that I don't see today. Whenever I look at the CRM market, and it's just it's a lot of like modern versions of Salesforce. The true innovation I want to see is something that's more fit for purpose, right? Because that would kind of reduce the need to add a lot of layers on top of Salesforce, right? If I could have something that's replacing Salesforce, but is more fit for purpose, then yes, maybe I still need to integrate with other tools like Userflow and so on. But it's not like core functionality that I'm integrating into Salesforce, stuff that I think should be in a CRM. Yeah. And I would also say when we did Cobo, right, one thing we did in Salesforce was we built the whole ARR calculation, right? Why do I have to build that in Salesforce myself, right? Or buy a tool that does that, right? It's silly, right? SaaS businesses should just be able to go to a CRM and get an ARR out of that system, right? Because that's how they do business.
Great point. I think when you dilute it down to the core problem, the use case is not that complicated. Most people use the CRM to view where your deals are and move them along and prioritize who you reach out to and when. So I completely agree with you. Talking about Cobalt, last thing I wanted to ask you and get your thoughts on is obviously Cobalt is a VC-backed startup, raised a lot of money, and now you're taking more of the bootstrap product-led route with Userflow. What did you learn from your Cobalt experience that you won't do twice with Userflow that you're doing differently now? I'm guessing a lot of things.
I don't think we did anything wrong with Cobo. Cobo is a very successful business and it's still growing really well. I think we're just trying, both Sebastian and I and my co-founder, we have a lot of experience now from the startup world, which means we can do things faster and maybe smarter, right? We don't have to relearn a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff we already know by now. I would say the reason why we're doing the bootstrap approach is because we now have that knowledge, right? We are able to do these kind of things. And I honestly, like, Cobo was also very product-led in the early days, but we decided to go the VC route, and that's been great for Cobo, and they've been growing well. But we also kind of ended up in a world where we maybe became too sales-led and needed to back up a bit and become more product-led again, right? And that's a journey we've been on in Cobo for the last years to become more product-led again. So I don't think anything was wrong in that. We did what was right at that time. But now I want to try to build a business that's product-led all the way, right? Like product-led from day one, and just keep going on the product-led motion and see how that goes. And bootstrapping is also part of that, right? We want to see how long can we bootstrap? Like how far can we get with a bootstrap approach? And so far so good. The business is going really well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I related to that a lot when you went on the SaaS tour, the SaaS podcast with Omar Khan. Because one of the reasons why we raised a pre-seed for Blinks is I'm a first-time founder. I don't have necessarily the experience to know right from scratch and to be able to bootstrap the business efficiently. So I think it's super smart what you did, and now you have that experience, so you can bypass probably mistakes that are costing a couple $100,000 for startups that don't have like 20 years of experience. So I think that's super smart. All right, it's time to wrap up. You're a busy person. I'm going to leave you alone for the day. But before I do, I want to ask quick fire questions because I have to copy every single podcast out there. So I need to ask you a couple quick questions. All right, first one. You ready?
Yeah.
What have I not asked you that you think I should ask? Classic sales question.
Where do people sign up for Userflow? And
why do people sign up for Userflow?
Why and where? So why, if you're a SaaS business looking to better convert or retain your customers, you can build in-app onboarding really easily in a no-code builder with Userflow. And it's found on userflow.com. Fantastic tool.
Amazing. We'll add the link in the description. Which CEO or founding team do you look up to and why?
So it changes a lot, right? I think there are many amazing founding teams out there. I want to highlight two teams that I found really interesting. One is quite kind of popular at the moment, namely Ben Chestnut from MailChimp. So MailChimp just sold their business to 12 billion to Intuit, right? And it's fully bootstrap business, which is like an amazing achievement. I read somewhere that per employee, they generate 700,000 in ARR.
700K, yeah. Shout out to Nathan Latka. I heard that.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. That's worth the admiration. And then another founder and CEO I admire a lot is Eric Wan from Zoom. So Zoom has also done an amazing job. I think they started around the same time as Cobo, but they grew above exponentially, right? And it was such a product-led motion, right? They just had the best product in the market. They beat like all the existing players because they have the best product, right? It was high quality, better UX, everything was just better, right? And that's why they won, and I really admire that.
Yeah, even though your marketing is not as strong as your sales touchpoints are not as strong, if your product is the best, you're going to win at the end of the day.
No, like the first time you tried Zoom, it was just a no-brainer, right? Then all the other tools, they were like, oh, we always had some kind of UX issue. You couldn't find this button or whatever. But with Zoom, it just made sense. And the quality of the sound and video was great, right?
Yeah. All right. What's the most underrated tool, growth technique, or skill for sales, in your opinion?
I think it's a funny question. I think integrity is a big one. I think actually it's a very underestimated one, but you can teach a salesperson to all the different sales techniques like prospecting, doing a demo, all that stuff. You can teach somebody, but the best salespeople have a lot of integrity, right? And they get that by being very knowledgeable about their product and their customers and their use cases. So I think that's a key skill that a great salesperson has.
Yeah. Something you wish you knew when you were 20.
So I wish that I knew that building startups was a career path. I think when I was 20, startup culture wasn't that big yet. It was starting to come around, right? Skype was, I think, Friis Sandstrom has just sold Skype around some years earlier, right? So I was starting to see some people in that space, but it was not a true career path when I was 20. And so I didn't start my first startup until I was, 28. And when I then joined an accelerator with Cobo, everybody else we met were 21, 22, right? And I wish I could have done the same. It's so much fun building companies.
So true, so true. The best way to learn is just start. I agree with you 100%. Amazing. Thanks, man. I really enjoyed the chat. Hope our listeners will do too. If people want to learn about Userflow, I'll add the link, userflow.com. If they want to reach you, what's the best way? Are you reachable? Is it possible?
I'm on LinkedIn, so that's a good way to reach me, either there or on my email, esben@userflow.com.
Cool. Thanks, Esben. Have a good one.
You too. Pleasure being here.
Bye.